I'm Felix. I'm one of the founders of Bytro Labs, Bytro. And we are, right from the beginning, we started to produce games that were, that the role model had boxed games. Yeah, so board games that are sold in a box. And we took them and basically created browser games that have the same mechanisms by it. And so quickly to introduce ourselves, our games look like that. You see a little bit like the board game Risk in here. There are different parties in different parts of the map. They all build up the economy, they have troops moving around, and they try to conquer the rest of the map. We build an engine on that, so we produce quite a number of games. We have 5 games built on this engine. They play in different times and have different main topics, a couple of different rules, different features, but all in all, they have a lot of similarities. We are 40 people, and we are based in Hamburg, like many other browser games developers. And in 2013, we joined the Stillfront group. That is a Swedish games group consisting of 5 studios now. And this is a kind of mitigation of the risk of game development, because we, of course, for a small studio, each new game is a high risk. We are the biggest studio there, and up to now, we've always been profitable. Now, together with this group, we moved to the Swedish Stock Exchange in 2015. So if you like, you can buy our shares, maybe after the topic, after I held this talk. So let's check out what I mean when I talk about replayable games. I talk about games that when you play them again, they are more fun after and that have a set of rules that make the player, when he plays it again, create new content himself, mainly because he plays against other players, and by this earning skill and replays the game over and over again. So I have some examples here for replayable games. Board games usually have an extremely high replayability, simply because of the fact that the box has a limited size, and the amount of content you can put in this box is just too small, so you need a game that you can replay. Chess, of course, has been around for many years. Card games is a similar thing. Here you have a chance involved, so a luck factor, and you are not aware of the whole game situation, which might be different in most board games. And there are some hybrids, but it's another type of game with a high replayability. And Counter-Strike is a very nice example of a computer game that is extremely high replayability and has many aspects that also board game has, because you have a playing field, you have starting positions that are basically fixed, and you play in this kind of environment over and over again and try new tactics and beat the other one. In contrast, we have content-driven games. Content-driven games have more like a linear gameplay, usually consisting of leveling up, just unlocking more content by doing repetitive tasks and so on. And one example is, of course, Heyday. You try to build up your farm, you do sell certain stuff to somebody that comes around and wants something from you, but you kind of harvest, give it to someone, build up your farm. Now, it doesn't mean that these games are not successful. Actually, they are very successful, of course, but the thought behind it is maybe replayable games have a longer lifetime in the end. Candy Crush is also for us a game that is a content-driven game. You do replay this level, but after you kind of manage the level, you are not so likely to come back to the level and play it again because it was so cool. You rather look for a new level that you want to manage. Yeah. So obviously there are some pros that speak for replayability, especially the very long lifetime. Yeah, chess has been here around for centuries. Counter-Strike for decades, and League of Legends will maybe be here for decades. Yeah, these are fantastic games. You don't need to create so much content for them. So when you have this core, the user cares much more about the gameplay than about the content. And that is why Counter-Strike 1.6 was around for such a long time, because users care about the rules. And also in the free-to-play arena, this gives great opportunities for monetization, because if people compete with each other, then they are very likely at some point when the leverage is kind of not in favor of them, and a war starts or some kind of conflict, you can seed it and you can show them a special offer, and they are very likely to buy it then. Yeah. How to deal with the imbalance that is induced by monetization, we will talk about later. There are a couple of disadvantages of it, and you might not have thought of those yet, but we experienced those, and I will show you some things that you can do against them in the end. But now let's focus on how to generate this replayability. Very obvious is, of course, it needs to be a PvP game. Yeah? Just only when players get together, they create new situations, and the fun is generated by them. Of course, these players could be very great AIs if the other guys don't realize that it's an AI, so that is possible, but still humans or human-like players. Then we need to have fair start positions. And fair starting positions doesn't necessarily mean similar positions, but it means positions that everybody can have the same chances of winning. In this map, it looks very similar, so it's pretty clear that this is a fair starting position. But it can add to the game if you create different starting positions that are very well balanced. Then it's, of course, for the game designer a harder work because he has to do much more balancing work. The game starts with an opening phase, and we call it at least the opening phase. And in this phase, the player decides for the strategy or for his initial strategy. He sets the pieces. In chess, he does some kind of opening, an aggressive one or rather a defensive one. The same applies for, let's say, Warcraft 3 or also StarCraft. And you can rush, you can tech, and so on. But we think that this opening phase should be quite short. Yeah? Because as the player replays the game, he has to go through this opening phase again and again. And this part is just, it can be repetitive, and we don't have a player that likes repetitiveness here. Yeah? So the opening phase is there, it's short, and then we come to the actual main game, and that is where the fun is. Yeah? So there's enemy contact, some kind of contact to the other player, and now we need a game that has well-balanced rules, so the players create new situations each time they play the game. Yeah. So it must not be a linear gameplay. It must be gameplay that enables the player to use different strategy and different tactics to win. So you can have many different ways of winning, and these new situations is a thing that the players create and have fun. And one thing that we always said when to test whether a game has great mechanics is when we create it and let players play, and they generate situations that we as game designers haven't thought of beforehand. Yeah, we see them playing, and then suddenly we see what are they doing? Wow, that is impressive. I've never seen that, and I never imagined that this could happen in my game just by these rules. Like probably the guy that invented chess has not thought of the great chess plays that are happening nowadays. Let's look at the main game a little bit more. So a part of fun is that a player evaluates his options. Yeah, so he thinks I have these options, and if I do this, then this can happen, and he evaluates. And then one player does one action. And in this moment, the options for all other players must change. And he must re-evaluate his whole decision tree and his whole options. And that is fun. That is what many players feel is fun. And you can also introduce some hidden states. So if the player doesn't know the whole world, but some parts are hidden, then you can even introduce probabilities. So now he's doing, okay, I have these 5 options and these 7 options with a probability X. And he's currently optimizing and doing it. That is one aspect. Then the second aspect is skill. Another very fun thing, to improve your skill. And especially in games where you sometimes lose, to improve your skill is a great thing you need to have, so you stick with it. You play it once, you lose, and you see, oh wow, there's much more possible. You play the second time, you improve a little bit, and maybe the game even displays your skill, and you are very appealed by it and think, okay, I can get better at it. And the third main game characteristic that we found is that the players need to have the possibility to catch up. So when someone has a little bit of a start, like a heads up at the start, then the others still need to have the ability to win. And you can achieve that via multiple things. One thing is the rubber band effect, that bigger players kind of have a penalty on when they grow. For example, Warcraft 3 has a high upkeep when you have a bigger army. You can also let people gang up against other players. That's in our game actually the case. So when someone becomes the biggest, he's also the most visible ones, and others take this opportunity and say, okay, guys, let's get together and fight this guy. You can let the mechanics of the game allow for surprise tactics. That means, let's say there's one special unit, for example, an air unit, that rarely is not produced, so not many players produce an air defense. Then this could be surprise tactics, that some players come up with air attack and destroy your base, even though he's stronger. And finally, you can use luck, so chance just gives players by chance some improvement. And suddenly the last card is an ace, and I still won. Yeah, but that is very dangerous. Usually players that are looking for skill and optimization don't like chance so much, but it's still, nevertheless, it's an option. Well, then the game evolves, and at some point there is a player that will win. Yeah, so everybody sees that, and now what happens? We want to avoid that the player has to go through again a repetitive thing and beat all the other players, and they need to stay with the game. So they need to be able to end the game. They need to say, all right, good game, or whatever, say I give up, and then the game's over, and they can start a new round and again come to the interesting main game. Yeah? And so let your players end this game. And now to the problems of replayability or games with a high replayability. When you play them, in contrast to content-driven games that have a kind of meta game, players lose their progress. And that's also a problem for paying users, because they invest in the game and they really want to win, and they invest maybe 1,000 euros or 5,000 euros in one round, and the round is over, and the money is gone, kind of. Maybe they're only third place, and that kind of sucks. So the solution is there to join both worlds, the content-driven one with the replayable, and induce a meta game. And Clash Royale did this in a very nice way. So they have a replayable game here, but behind it there's a trading card game, and they are successful with it. I don't know from which direction they actually came, if they had a trading card game and then said we need some kind of fun mechanism above it, or if they had this fun mechanism and added the trading card later, or both at the same time. Would be interesting to know. But still, I think it's a good example where both worlds are joined. And another problem is players actually lose a lot of times. Let's say you play a battlefield, and there are so many players, and one is the number one, and all the other 90 are losing, or 63. Yeah? So there you have to apply a lot of things, like you can give out rewards and whatnot, so also metagame. But it's important to show the user that he improves in his skill. Yeah. So to show him, hey, this is the first time you finished in the top 10, or the first time you finished, you improved these many places. Yeah. And finally, you have a problem of strong against weaker players or paying players against weaker players. And this, you can apply matchmaking to rank them evenly. That's a very good measure to do so. Yeah, and that was basically it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Felix. And I have a question, actually, a lot of them, so just a simple, stupid question. And do some kind of Easter eggs or cheats increase the playability of a game?
Good, interesting question. So I think it is never wrong to add content to a game, like an Easter egg, yeah? Because it can just make it fresh again, yeah, or introduce more new rules or some other thing, an event or so. But it only works if the core game is solid. Yeah.
Next question. So if I'm a developer and I have some simple game, well, not so simple, like chess or backgammon, so how can I increase my players' LTV? If I already sold this game, what can I do?
Well, I think you have plenty of options from the non-replayable world, from the content-driven world. They have done that to an excess. Yeah? There are so many things to get users back with Skinner box type of clicking and coming back. I think this can all be used in the replayable games, yeah? To get people high activity, to get them more active again.
Thank you, Felix.